Hello everyone, welcome back. And this is part 3 of our VFR flight planning tutorial. This is when we're actually going to try to fly all that flight work that we did a little bit previously. We're going to be flying in the Cessna 172. This is the G1000 version, so for folks who are at home, they can go ahead and experience this with us. You can see we're sitting here cold and dark. We're going to go through the entire process. It's probably going to take us longer to get the thing ready and get to the actual flight than it's going to take us to actually do the flight itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at everything, and let's get to it. So Cessna 172, about as easy as it gets as far as starting this thing goes. We're going to go over here. We're going to go ahead and flick on our handy-dandy cabin power switch. Now, of course, before we do that, we're going to go and flip all this stuff over here. Don't go flipping your avionics bus on right away. That's actually very dangerous. You don't want to be doing that if you don't need to. You're going to get all sorts of angry warnings when you do that. Don't worry about it too much. You can go ahead and cancel those. I'm going to go ahead and stick in my mixture control. Again, this is a really easy aircraft. We're doing a basic one. Turn on my bacon light, and all I have to do is sit there and crank the key, and I'm pretty much good to go. Clear prop. And we are good. All right. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we're going to go ahead and finish up our little stuff here. We're going to go ahead and flip on our avionics bus. You want to make sure both half of that turned on. Just like a regular G1000, we got to go through and press the little enter key and everything like that. This actually takes a few minutes to boot up. We're actually going to shut off this view here so we can't cheat any harder. But what I do want to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip to the other page, and now I can't cheat. Haha. Okay. So first thing we want to do, of course, is we want to listen to the ATIS to listen to exactly what the weather conditions are at this particular airport, as well as determine which one of our airport runways we're actually going to be using. So luckily for us, if you remember, we spent all that hard work trying to get all those frequencies. You can actually see all the frequencies we need basically sitting right here in the corner. So we can quickly grab that. So in this case, we need a 127. So come up to this side. We're going to go flip over to 127. Go zipping through this real quickly. That channel spacing is irritating. I should fix that. Flip.
London Airport information. Oscar 15000. Zulu. Line 285 at 5. Visibility 10. Sky condition. Few clouds at 700 feet. Few clouds at 4,400 feet. Few clouds at 12,400 feet. Temperature 17. Dew point 10. Altimeter tree 0.24.
As soon as we hear that, you want to update it?
Tree in use.
Runway 33.
Runway 33. VFR aircraft. Say direction of flight.
Okay.
All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have Oscar.
Okay, that tells us everything we need to know. We know that we're using runway tree. We know that we have to advise the controller that we're going to be using Oscar for a takeoff. We also know the critical information, which is our altimeter setting, which we've actually quickly set already. So let's go ahead and contact the tower. And actually, let's contact ground, I'm sorry. And let's ask them quite nicely for them to go ahead and give us permission to taxi to the active runway. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to 121.6, swap. And we're just going to go ahead and call them. Oh, 65. Forgot a digit. That's okay, though. So we're going to go and ask them quite nicely for us to do a north departure.
Ground Red 64 with Oscar request taxi to the active north departure.
Red 64 taxi to and hold short of runway tree via taxiway Alpha cross runway 23 Charlie. Contact tower on 125.6 when ready.
Okay. Now we're just going to go ahead and read back to them, saying we're good to go.
Hold short runway tree using taxiway Alpha cross runway 23 Charlie Red 64.
So we're going to be aiming for runway tree here. So basically what we have to do is we're going to have to go down here, turn ourselves around, cross this runway, go all the way down here, go ahead and take a right turn, and then do our normal takeoff there. So after doing our read back, we're pretty much good to go. Go ahead and now pop this out. Everything is looking pretty good on my side. I'll go ahead and shut that down for now. Release my parking brake. Excuse me, sir. And we're just simply going to bring ourselves right around. So far, so good, right? Stick my head up a little bit. We're going to be taking our first turn. This is going to be going from this little taxiway zone. This is going to be hotel right here. All right, there we go. So from hotel, we're going to be crossing on to Bravo, which is going to be on my left-hand side. Look, make sure I'm not cutting anybody off. That's pretty good. Again, at a towered airport, you're going to be getting instructions directly from the tower itself. Okay, we're now currently on Bravo. In just a minute, we're going to be hitting Charlie. All right. Charlie is right here. On our immediate right is going to be runway tree. But remember, before we can cross onto runway tree, we're going to ask them quite nicely what their tower is, if we have permission to take off. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us to a nice little stop right here. Now, keep in mind, we're doing a midfield takeoff here because we have plenty of room. So now we need to go ahead and confirm what our tower frequency is. In this particular case, we're looking at 125.6. Again, I'm just getting this off of that little information I got just a minute ago. 125.6, swap, and we simply ask for takeoff clearance.
Tower Red 64 at runway tree ready for takeoff north departure.
Let's give it just a moment.
Red 64 cleared for takeoff runway tree departure to the north approved.
All right, we've been approved. We're just going to acknowledge our approval.
Cleared for takeoff runway.
All right, let's go.
Red 64.
As soon as we get airborne, of course, we're going to go ahead and start the timer, and we're going to begin our flight. Wow. Hey, we've been given permission. Let's do it. Alrighty. While we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get my heading bug all set up correctly. Remember, we're traveling at tree to tree here. Let's go ahead and get this all set up. Tree to tree. Go ahead and take a right. Now, usually when you get on the runway, as soon as you're on the runway, you just go. Full power. And we are on our way. Got a little bit of that crosswind. Remember, according to our instructions, we're looking to go ahead and pull up at about 46 knots or so. That looks pretty good. The nose up. And we are on our flight. Yes. Okay, as usual, you don't want to be jerking directly across an active runway, so we're going to get a little tiny bit of altitude, then we're going to go ahead and pull ourselves to the left. Coming to the left just a little bit, and now we are on our course. Okay, taking a look at our flight plan real quickly, I'm noticing that our first leg should take us about 3, almost 4 minutes to complete. I'll go ahead and pull the nose up. I'm using the live weather feature of Microsoft Flight Simulator here, so it'll be very interesting to see just how accurate it is. We want to be climbing at about 74 knots here.
Or continue for north departure. I will contact you next when you leave my airspace. Tower Red 64 continue for north departure.
Remember, we're going to be climbing at 74 knots until we get to an altitude of 2,500 feet. So we need to come to the right just a teeny tiny bit here. Looking pretty good. Oh, man, we cannot be flying this more perfect if we didn't have autopilot on. But the autopilot, of course, immediately hijacked my good flight here. So I'm not going to let it do that if I don't have to. All right, 1:25. Remember, based on our calculations, we should be getting to the top of this, 4.3 nautical miles away from where we just took off from, and we should be hitting that point at about, like I said, it's about 3.5, almost 4 minutes total climb time here, which is exactly what we expected. Again, I'm just being very liberal with the trim here as we try to climb. That wind is definitely noticeable. It's pulling us a little bit to the left. It's pretty good so far. It looks pretty good. You can hear me clicking away at my trim here. I've got a good old-fashioned electric trim here, so you have to kind of play with it. Looks pretty darn good. I'm going to go ahead and start preparing some of these systems over on this side. Of course, our selected altitude is going to be 2,500 feet. Looks pretty good. We're going a little bit too fast with my climb here. Go ahead and slow down just a teeny bit. Don't forget that once we get up to our cruise altitude, we're going to have to start thinking just a little bit about leaning that mixture. I'm going to let the nose come down a little bit. Remember, 1,500 feet is the height of that radio stack, and I'm not seeing it here, but we do know that it exists at the end of that lake based on what we learned in our little pilotage experience earlier. So we will be able to clear the top of that without too much difficulty. All right, we're pushing just about 3 minutes of flight time. We should be crossing that first position, like I said, right around 4 minutes. We're getting a little bit steep here, so I'm actually going to let the nose come down a little bit. Remember, as you climb, the air will get progressively thinner. So in order to maintain the same speed, as far as indicated airspeed goes, you're actually going to have to fly less angle, even though your actual airspeed is actually significantly higher than that. We're already a couple degrees off here. We want to be very cautious. Remember, a single degree off is the equivalent of an entire mile distance off at 60 miles. So kind of keep that in the back of your head. You must keep that as close as you possibly can. All right, we're pushing 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Remember, 3 minutes, 48 seconds, we should be hitting our top of climb. And then shortly afterwards, about 3 minutes later, we should be hitting those radio stacks as well. So we're doing pretty darn well so far. Again, everything seems to be good. The wind seems to be a little bit stronger than we calculated it. Oh no, I forgot to shut this off. Sorry about that, everybody. So our wind is slightly higher, well, it's faster than we expected it to be. We're getting close to our cruise altitude here. Again, trying to keep everything as precise as we possibly can, because every little lack of precision is going to result in our dead reckoning not being successful. We're about 100 feet away from our cruise altitude. I'm going to start gently nosing over. Don't just go bonk and knock it down as fast and as hard as you can. If you do that, it's just going to get grumpy at you. All right, 2,500 feet.
Red 6-4 acknowledge. Last transmission. Tower Red 6.
All right, we've just crossed our top of descent. We were 20 seconds late. That's not too bad. Our next position, we should be approaching and be hitting it at in about, this should be, if we're about 6 seconds late, it'll be 15:06, which would be 3 minutes from now. So that will be about at the 7-minute point we'll be hitting our next one. Keep in mind this aircraft does take time to accelerate up to its cruise speed, which is why I'm leaving the power all the way up at this time. All right, looks pretty good. Come on. Switch that to altitude hold mode. Of course, we didn't want 2,600, we wanted 20,000. There we go. Getting our speed up. There we go. Coming down onto our descent. Again, at about the 7-minute point, we're going to be actually about the 6-minute and 34-second point here. We should be crossing the radio stacks, which in the real world are basically located right here. So you can see already we are slightly too far to the west of our destination, which actually doesn't surprise me in the slightest. All right, now we're going to set our cruise power. Remember, it was 2,520 RPM. All right, a little bit too much. Give it just a little bit more. Yeah, not quite, not quite. Looks good. Go ahead and lean our mixture. All right, looking awesome so far. Let's go ahead and take a look at our flight plan as is. So it looks right now we're trying to hit this point right around the 6 minutes and 34-second point. You can see about 2 minutes from that particular position is where we're going to be hitting that, which is about right, kind of looking at it real quickly. We notice that our next position is going to be about this far away, and we should be doing about 116 at this particular time. Let's go ahead and back that out real quickly. All right, 634. We should be crossing the radio stacks, which in the real world are incredibly obvious. And I wonder if we can actually see the tower from where it would be normally on its own. On the top of this hill, it's basically right here in the real world. So you can take a look that even though we got up a little bit, we were actually just about on time. We're just about 10 seconds early, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. So, so far, so good. So we're going to have to change this heading of 323 a little bit once we get a little bit closer. But I'm looking over on my right, I'm noticing my RPM peaked. So I actually need to back the power out because we're going way too fast. One of the consequences is as you accelerate with a non-constant speed propeller, you're going to cause your RPM to gradually come back up as well. So we actually went a little too far. So it's kind of hard to find that exact perfect spot with the throttle. You definitely have to play with it quite a bit. Now our true airspeed, of course, since we're on a G1000, we can just keep playing with the throttle until this says 116. But again, we're going purely on calculated values now. Okay, so our next interesting point, now that we've successfully identified, and we seem to be, like I said, just ever so slightly west of our destination, is we're going to be looking when we cross the 11-minute 59-second point. Again, we're going to be a little early because we're going fast. We're going to be looking for actually taking the drag strip and several lakes on our left-hand side. Now, if I pop open our quick little sky vector real quick here, let me go ahead and open this up. Go ahead and hide this for just a moment. Whoop, and then it's gone. Oh well. So now that we're kind of cruising around really, really quickly, we're just looking around for where that pack of lakes is. I'm going to work to try to get that back open. Keep in mind, in the real world, most of the planes you're going to be flying to start do not have these fancy pants, autopilots to help you work this out while you're still operating the plane. One thing that I do see from a landmark perspective is I can pick out this highway very distinctively, and that's what we were looking for. Bingo. So it looks like we are still slightly to the west at this time, which doesn't surprise me. Now, also, we're going quite a bit fast. Actually, we're getting a little bit closer to the speed we're supposed to be traveling at. You can see that every time I make a little tiny throttle adjustment that the RPM dramatically changes. That's just something you're going to have to play with a lot in order to get this to be safe. So now we need to make a decision. Do we continue on the current heading that we're traveling on, or do we try to correct our aircraft so that we can go ahead and relocate where we need to be? So if I know that this little lake squirt right here, we have the little pack of lakes, which I believe is over on my left side. Yeah, there it is. So this is the group of lakes, which is going to be directly to the west of where we're going to need to be in just a minute. So we can ask ourselves, do we want to try to adjust so we can get exactly where we need to be on them, or do we keep going? The reality is, generally you're going to want to adjust, but the problem is it's going to be really, really difficult to accurately identify exactly how far away we need to be in the air. That's just something that experience does for you. All right, taking a look out the left window here. Total time is 9 minutes and 1 second. Taking a look at our flight plan, our next point should be at 11:59, and that should be where the drag strip and the lakes are. Looking out my left window here, here's all of our lakes. We want to be hitting this actually fairly cleanly across the right side. Just checking my notes real quickly. That little squiggle of a lake, it's going to be... That squiggle should have another squiggle lake directly to the left of it. Again, this just comes from experience. We've got that aggressive set over there. And we should be crossing that point. Again, all right there. This will be, I'm just studying really, really quickly. Left, so it'll be 11:59. Okay, so we are slightly to the west still. So do you see this lake right here? We're actually supposed to be on this side of this lake right now. And that tells me that the wind is not as strong as we calculated. As a matter of fact, when these lakes are now abeam us on our left wing, we will have crossed our next waypoint. So looking at our next waypoint, we're supposed to be hitting it at 11:59. Looking down here, we're probably going to hit it closer to 10 minutes, 30 seconds. And we're still too far directly to the west. So again, we'd have to calculate, do we want to try to get another spot? Do we want to try to identify a separate lake that we can use to kind of cut it off? Again, I'll go pop a look at my little flight plan real quickly here. So we're aiming for this particular waypoint. You can see that that waypoint would be that one that was directly on our left as we cross that point. So we need to make a slight adjustment to the right in order to compensate for this. I'm going to get back into here. I'm going to do a very, very gentle 2-degree adjustment to the right. Now, if you look directly here, do you recognize the drag strip? Let's go ahead and take a look at our flight plan here. So that drag strip is right there on my left. Oh, you can't miss it. Look at how close it is. I am way too close to it. I'm supposed to be over here. We're supposed to be here. If we actually go back to our flight plan one more time, you can actually see the drag strip right here, but we're basically flying over the top of it. So we're actually right here on the left as opposed to being on the right. Hence that gentle correction to the right. The next thing we need to be looking out for is now that we're too far to the left, we're going to have to be looking to my right to find this goofy little kind of airport that's going to be locating there. The other thing is we just crossed that point. I'm looking at my clock real quick. It says 11:22. We crossed it. We're supposed to be crossing at 11:59. So we've actually lost some time. So the headwind is actually stronger than the crosswind. So we need to go on another 3 minutes or so and try to find our next point, as well as see if our correction is going to be enough. So back over here in the simulator, I'm trying to find Salmon River. Yeah, you're never ever going to be able to find a grass runway. That's simply not a thing. There's that pack of lakes that we saw over just a minute ago. We were supposed to have crossed that a minute ago, but we did that 20 seconds. So 20 seconds out of 19. So that means we're not going to be crossing our next waypoint for basically 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's take a look, and it should be a distinctive lake on our left that's going to have a mountain range directly to our right. Bingo. See it? So this section of lake right here is actually going to be our next waypoint. And taking a look really, really quickly, I can see that that's going to be off to my left. What we need to be looking for, there it is. See it? So this is the grass runway, and this is the lake itself that we're looking at. Now remember, we're supposed to be nipping the corner of this grass runway here, but I can see clearly we're going through the center. So I'm actually going to correct ourselves by bringing us slightly to the right and then coming back to my original heading, trying to correct my mistake there. Again, just imagine if you misidentified this, how difficult this could be. Yeah, we're still not doing enough. I'm actually going to bring us a little bit more to the right here. Again, this is why dead reckoning is so much more effective than pilotage. I noticed immediately that we were slightly to that direction of that particular place. And taking a look at my time right now, we should be crossing this particular position on the corner of it at exactly, like I said, it's about 15 minutes in. This is about 13 minutes in. So we're almost 2 minutes early, which makes sense because look at how much faster we're going. That also means our wind isn't nearly as strong, like I was saying, as we had expected it to be. So that is not an unusual problem that you're going to encounter from time to time. Again, it's things like that you're always going to be watching out for. All right, I just noticed something. I'm looking at this lake over here, and I'm looking at this little thing down here that looks a lot like a grass strip. But what I'm also noticing is there's a lake that looks identical to it right here on my right-hand side. Now, we know we were all off a little bit, so did we get the wrong lake, or did we get the wrong airport? Did we get the wrong lake, or did we get the wrong airport? Safest way to check is look what time it is. Remember, we were expecting to cross that particular position at the 15-minute mark, but it's at the 14-minute mark. So what's the probability that this is actually going to be our strip, and that's actually going to be our lake? So the only way that could possibly be, since we're pretty much exactly on time, would be the fact that this lake would be significantly to the right of where the actual airport is. When I take a look at my chart, this is how you know we didn't goof up. Notice that little lake is right here. We're actually right on time. If anything, we're 30 seconds early. So we actually did a good job. Thank God for being able to look out the window. So we know that we're about 15 minutes in. We're about 30 seconds early to crossing our particular point. And we know we got it right because of the relationship of these 2 points. Now, since we've reacquired our waypoint, I'm going to re-bring the aircraft back to our original desired heading that we wanted to be traveling on previously. Now, the nice thing here is the fact that I know I'm about 30 seconds early right now. So if you take a look at our flight plan form, let's go ahead and take a quick look. You'll notice the fact that my next position is going to be around 19 minutes minus 30 seconds, because remember I said I was about 30 seconds early? So we need to start our descent at exactly, instead of 19 minutes, we're going to be looking at a 1926 is going to be basically 1856 is when we have to start our descent. So let's go ahead and pop back over to our simulator. And now we are dealing with our bigger problem. We have such a long leg here that we're not going to have any really good waypoints to double check to make sure we're on time. So right now you see we're about 15:24. Remember, our descent should be starting at 18 minutes 56. I'm going to go ahead and start preparing everything for our descent. Going to go ahead and go down to about 1,000 feet. Now is a great time to check the weather at your destination airport. So if you remember, we took so much time to go ahead and get everything planned, I can just check the ATIS code 126.45 all the way from the air. So let's go ahead and get that now. 126.45. Let's listen to the weather.
Brainerd Airport information, India 1500 Zulu. Wind 185 at 8. Visibility 10. Sky condition, few clouds at 700 feet, few clouds at 4,400 feet, few clouds at 12,400 feet. Temperature 15. Dew point 10. Altimeter tree 0.24. Visual runway 20 in use. Landing and departing runway 20. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have India.
Okay, India is important because when we call...
Information India 1500 Zulu.
Pretty sure I switched out of it.
At 8.
All right, so the nice thing here is we notice that the runway in use is runway 20. We also notice the fact that we need to say the word India when we contact them to let them know that we did get the weather properly. So I'm noticing my time is about 16:54, and looking out the window, I notice I'm getting awfully darn close to my destination, and I haven't started my descent yet. Remember, we've been traveling significantly faster than we had pre-calculated. As a matter of fact, I was just looking out my left window here, and I noticed there's a distinctive little squiggle that represents a rocky hill. So in this particular case, I noticed that my top of descent point is exactly perpendicular to this particular spot in the river. So the good news is we're early, but we also know that we haven't gotten too close yet. I know that sounds kind of weird and sort of redundant, but we're actually okay. So I know you might think, oh, we got to descend at any time now. We do, but we don't need to descend until we hit this point, so we're perfectly good. Don't forget, by the way, that you want to make sure that you update your altimeter based on what you just heard from that particular airport. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself all up nice and set here. This is a fun little trick here, what I like to do. I like to assign this as going to be that approach. I'm going to turn that on. Just make my life a little bit simpler. All right, looking pretty good. All right, we don't have to descend until we're basically like this. And when we descend, we need to be descending at about 116 knots. So it looks like our power is just a little teeny tiny bit high here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce it just a little bit. Now this is a great time to go ahead and contact air traffic control. Now remember we spent all that time trying to figure out what our distances and times were? Well, this is a great time to show us that we've done our homework. We can actually contact them now and let them know we're about 5 nautical miles away from them. Now the reason I know this is because our top of descent point, which I'm referencing right here on my left, is about 5 nautical miles away. So all we have to do is call them up. Again, if you want to get this frequency, you could have gotten that off before. And notice when we contact them what we ask.
Brainerd Tower Red 64 is 6 miles southeast with India to land. Red 64, Brainerd Tower. Make left traffic, runway 20. Altimeter tree, 0.24 wind 185 at 8. Fly left downwind runway 20 Red 64.
Ta-da! Just like I promised. So right as we crossed that line, we were actually about 5.8 nautical miles, and it called it a 6. You gotta admit, that's pretty darn accurate. So now we're going to start our slow descent. We actually need to be on a heading of 322 right now. However, I can visually acquire the runway looking out the front of the window. It's this little smidge right here. Now, when we called them, they told us we needed to enter into a left traffic pattern for 20. Now, the nice thing is, and again, if you have your website upside down, ready to go, it's upside down, right? You can actually take a look. That 20 is going to be kind of this runway right here. So we noticed that our opposite heading of 20 is obviously going to be 2. Then we're going to go take our left and left and bring us in. We want to be hitting right about here when we actually show up to do our landing here. So you can see very clearly the actual runway itself. I'm going to go ahead and bring us gently over here to the right. Need to get a little bit more angle on this because I want to hit that a little bit cleaner of an angle. Slow down. We're going way too fast on our descent here. Now, if you're a real hotshot, you could actually try to basically slow down at the last possible second. Remember, we need to be at 1,000 feet by the time we hit right where my mouse is sitting right here. Now, isn't this incredible that we were able to do this just by using a clock? Now, I'm taking a look down here. I'm just studying my numbers real quick. We're supposed to be landing at 22:53. So you can see that I've got about a minute and a half before we should theoretically be on the ground. But remember, the wind was not what we calculated it at. And remember that we had to do an adjustment when we were able to safely identify where that extra grass strip was. We're just incredibly fortunate that that grass strip was so obvious and we were able to basically set ourselves up. That's why really pilotage and dead reckoning feed each other. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start reducing power seriously here. So it looks like the wind was not nearly as strong as we calculated it to be. Because as a result, we ended up actually getting here early, even though everything else was going fairly well. Go ahead and continue slowing down. Take a look at the air traffic control tower. Hey guys, how you doing? There's nobody parked here today. That's a little weird. Okay, remember we need to be at 1,000 feet. So we're at a safe speed. I'm actually going to drop my first notch of flaps already. All right, looking pretty good, looking pretty good. This is the great thing about synthetic vision is you can just look straight down. You can see exactly where you need to be. We need to be doing 65 knots. We're about to enter a traffic pattern. Autopilot off. And would you look at that? We hit 1,000 feet pretty much exactly on time. Now, let me go ahead and pause for half a second to show you a really cool trick. So when you're flying your traffic pattern, what you can actually do is you can take your heading indicator to determine exactly where you need to be going. So in this case, I can actually set this VOR line, if you're so inclined, to actually face the direction of the runway. Didn't mean to do that. Go ahead and center the direction of the runway that you're landing on. Watch this trick. I love this one. Come on. Anytime. So now you can actually look directly at your compass to know precisely where you need to be facing so that you can safely land the plane. So you're like, now you can see my traffic pattern is going to take me on this green line to land on this green arrow. So go ahead and unpause. Go ahead and swing myself around, and perfect. 1,000 feet. Next notch of flaps. Goes down, okay. Come to my left just a little bit, but look at that. You can see exactly where you need to be in order to fly your traffic pattern. And now if I look out the window, I can confirm that that wind is indeed a lot stronger than I expected. All right, gonna go ahead and drop my first notch of flaps, second notch of flaps, and I'm gonna start my slow descent downwards. Remember, about 65 knots is the magic speed.
Cleared to land runway 20. Wind 185 at 8.
Cleared. All right, let's do it.
Runway 20 red 64.
We're waiting for about 45-degree angle. All right, go ahead and stomp on that left rudder. No, you don't have to stomp on it. It does take a little bit of force there. Now, if you take a look at my compass, I can see exactly when I need to stop turning base here because I'll basically have that green line perpendicular to my flight path, which is right there. We're going to be having a left crosswind. Last notch of flaps. Go ahead and do your landing checklist. Gas, undercarriage, mixture, propeller, flaps, lights, speed. And there is a glorious, glorious runway 20. Remember, the wind's going to be pushing you from the left to right. This was not what we calculated or predicted for, but again, who knows what's going to happen in the real world. We're a bit high, but that's okay. Looks pretty good. All right, we're a bit more on number. Now notice it has a VASI as opposed to a PAPI. Oh well. Actually, no, it does have a PAPI. My apologies. We're just going to aim right at the number 20 at the end of the runway, and we're basically going to fly the plane until you're right about to crash into it. There's that crosswind, and prepare to crash into it, lift up at the last second, and you're just going to wait for the plane to stop flying, and we're here. Nice. And we landed at 24 minutes and 9 seconds.
Red 64, turn next taxiway.
You got it. And that is all there is to it. So let's go ahead and get out of the runway.
Ground on 121.6.
And hold the brake. Nice. Okay, so let's see here. We ended at about 24:04. I'll go ahead and take a look at our flight plan real quick here. We expected to land, that was about a minute and a half ago. Keep in mind, it did take time to actually bring the airplane all the way around to actually get to the correct altitude. Our top of descent was way too late. We should have done that much sooner so we could have gotten our speed more under control. Now, the interesting thing is how much fuel do you think we ended up with? This says 5.7 gallons. If I actually pop back over to the simulator, let's see exactly how much fuel we actually used. Let's see, 5.7 here. We started with a 50. 50 minus 22.54 minus 22.54 took us 4.92 gallons of fuel. We calculated 5.7. So we actually got better gas mileage in the simulator than we did in the air. I think the big reason for that is that little assumption you use as far as your climb fuel usage was considerably different than what we actually calculated it to be based on the book.
121.6.
Okay, that was a lot. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this little Dead Reckoning series. This is going to be a very, very different experience doing this using instruments because basically we just grab a VOR and go, which makes this drastically simpler. But at the same time, as I wanted everybody to see just how involved it is to pick out your waypoints, find your waypoints, calculate your times, calculate your fuels, so that you could safely get to your destination without references to instruments other than direction and speed. Enjoy.